The relationship between Barack Obama and Benjamin Netanyahu began with friction and ended with rupture. They entered office within months of each other in 2009, and their disagreements over Iran's nuclear program would reshape American-Israeli relations for a generation. Obama was determined to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and to negotiate a nuclear agreement with Iran. He successfully pressured Netanyahu to publicly accept the two-state solution at Bar-Ilan University in 2009, but the deeper disagreement was over Iran. Obama believed that diplomacy, backed by sanctions, could constrain Iranian nuclear ambitions without war. Netanyahu believed that only military threat or military action could prevent an Iranian bomb. The rupture became public on March 3, 2015. Netanyahu accepted an invitation from Republican Speaker John Boehner to address a joint session of Congress without consulting the White House. 55 Democrats boycotted the speech. Susan Rice, Obama's national security advisor, called it destructive to the fabric of the relationship. So Netanyahu's message was categorical. The emerging deal was not merely flawed, but catastrophic. This is a bad deal, a very bad deal. We're better off without it, he declared. He warned that the agreement would all but guarantee that Iran gets those weapons and invoked the Holocaust, stating that Iran's supreme leader spews the oldest hatred of anti-Semitism with the newest technology. Obama's response was dismissive. As far as I can tell, there was nothing new in the speech, he said. The Prime Minister didn't offer any viable alternatives. The Iran deal was signed 4 months later. Netanyahu had failed to stop it. But he had succeeded in something else. By openly aligning with the Republican Party against a Democratic president, Netanyahu shattered the bipartisan foundation of American support for Israel that had endured since 1948. The Pew poll at the time showed only 28% of Democrats viewed Netanyahu favorably, while 35% were unfavorable. Israel was becoming a partisan issue in American politics, and Netanyahu had made the calculation that this was a price worth paying to stop the Iran deal. Donald Trump's election in 2016 transformed Netanyahu's position. Where Obama had been adversary, Trump became ally. Where the Iran deal had been signed, it would be shredded. In May 2018, Trump withdrew the United States from the JCPOA and launched the maximum pressure campaign. Sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and economic strangulation designed to force Iranian capitulation. Netanyahu hailed the withdrawal as a historic move that required courageous leadership. In private conversations, he took credit. We convinced the US president to exit the deal, and I had to stand up against the whole world. The alignment was personal and ideological. Trump moved the US embassy to Jerusalem at Netanyahu's urging. He mused with Netanyahu about a US takeover of Gaza. He invited Netanyahu as the first foreign leader to visit the White House in his second term. But the strategic logic was flawed. 3 years after withdrawal, Iran's nuclear program was at its most advanced stage ever. The centrifuges that had been limited to 5,060 under the JCPOA were now spinning in the thousands. The stockpile that had been capped at 300 kilograms had grown to over 3,000 kilograms. The enrichment that had been restricted to 3.67% had reached 60%, a short technical step from weapons grade. A growing chorus of former Israeli officials decried the strategy as nothing short of calamitous. The deal that Netanyahu had called a very bad deal had at minimum constrained Iranian advancement. Its destruction had accelerated it. The Trump-Netanyahu alignment had achieved its immediate political objective, destroying Obama's signature foreign policy achievement. It had failed to achieve its strategic objective, preventing Iranian nuclear advancement. The gap between political victory and strategic failure would define the next decade. When Trump returned to office in January 2025, Netanyahu expected continuity. He received contradiction. Trump's second-term Iran strategy combined 3 elements that were not merely different from Netanyahu's preferences but actively opposed to them: diplomacy, limitation, and exit. In February 2025, Trump signed National Security Presidential Memorandum 2, reinstating maximum pressure sanctions. But simultaneously, he offered negotiations to Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Netanyahu's response was to prepare for war. He reportedly instructed the Israeli military to prepare to strike Iran by mid-2025. Israeli Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer led delegations to Washington, pushing for a time limit on maximum pressure before military action. Trump disagreed. His February 2025 letter to Khamenei offered a deal while warning that there are 2 ways Iran can be handled: militarily or you make a deal. The negotiation track that Netanyahu had spent a decade deriding was now being pursued by the president he had helped elect. The divergence became public and acute. In June 2025, as Israeli jets were en route to attack additional Iranian targets, Trump informed Netanyahu that the fight was over. It was the first time an American president had stopped an Israeli military operation in mid-flight. The 2026 war intensified the contradiction. Netanyahu had sold Trump on the idea that military action could mobilize an Iranian uprising, that a war with Iran could mobilize an uprising against its hardline Islamic government. Trump announced this vision in his February 28th video launching Operation Epic Fury. But he notably backed off the idea of a popular uprising in the weeks since. By April 2026, the collision was structural. Netanyahu needed to win, a decisive outcome that eliminated the Iranian threat permanently. Trump needed to end, a swift exit that demonstrated his America First aversion to foreign entanglement. As one analyst noted, Trump does not need Netanyahu to end the war. Netanyahu cannot continue the war without Trump. The April 17, 2026 shut-up call, Trump's public order to Netanyahu to stop the Lebanon war, was the culmination of this divergence. Netanyahu complied, announcing a ceasefire he admitted was premature. His strategic goals in South Lebanon were not fully achieved. Hezbollah remained a threat, but at the request of the American president, we are stopping the war. The Obama-Trump-Netanyahu triangle reveals three structural patterns in American-Israeli-Iranian relations. First, the Iran nuclear issue has consistently generated greater divergence between American and Israeli leaders than convergence. Obama and Netanyahu disagreed over whether diplomacy could work. Trump and Netanyahu disagreed over whether military action should be limited or unlimited. Biden and Netanyahu disagreed over humanitarian constraints in Gaza. In each case, the tactical alignment, Democratic or Republican, sympathetic or critical, masked strategic misalignment over ends and means. Second, Netanyahu's political strategy has consistently prioritized Israeli domestic politics over American bipartisanship. The 2015 Congress speech was designed to shore up his electoral position weeks before Israeli elections. The 2025 to 2026 war push was designed to eliminate the Iranian threat before Netanyahu faced domestic pressure over Gaza failures. In each case, the American relationship was instrumentalized for Israeli political survival. Third, American presidents have consistently discovered that the forever war architecture serves different interests than their electoral promises. Obama campaigned on ending Middle East wars, but found himself bombing 7 countries. Trump campaigned on avoiding foreign entanglement, but launched a regime change operation against Iran. Biden campaigned on restoring diplomacy, but found himself managing an escalating regional conflict. The gap between campaign rhetoric and presidential action reflects not hypocrisy, but the structural trap. The Middle East generates crises faster than American politics can generate alternatives. The 2026 resolution, if it proves to be a resolution, was not achieved by any of the three men's preferred strategies. Obama diplomacy failed to constrain Iranian enrichment. Trump maximum pressure failed to produce capitulation. Netanyahu military action failed to achieve regime change. What succeeded, temporarily, was the transactional pressure that Trump applied to Netanyahu and the Iranian response that reopened Hormuz in exchange for Lebanese ceasefire. This was not grand strategy. It was crisis management by a president who wanted out, a prime minister who wanted in, and an Iranian regime that wanted to survive. The Obama-Trump-Netanyahu triangle persists because it serves functions beyond the specific policy disputes that generate its visible conflicts. For Obama, the Iran deal was a bet that engagement could transform an adversary. A bet that failed not because the deal was flawed, but because its destruction removed constraints without providing alternatives. For Trump, the maximum pressure campaign and subsequent war were bets that coercion could produce capitulation. A bet that failed because Iran's mosaic defense strategy and regional proxy network absorbed pressure without collapsing. For Netanyahu, the military campaign was a bet that American power could eliminate an existential threat. A bet that failed because the threat was structural, not merely military, and because American presidents inevitably discover that Israeli wars are easier to start than to end. The architecture of forever war is not a conspiracy of these three men. It is the emergent property of their competing calculations. Obama's belief in diplomatic transformation, Trump's belief in coercive dominance, Netanyahu's belief in military preemption. Each calculation was rational, each was partially correct, each was insufficient. The question is not which of the three was right. The question is whether any American president or Israeli prime minister can escape the structural trap that the Iran nuclear issue has become. A trap where diplomacy is too slow, coercion is too costly, and military action produces temporary disruption without permanent resolution. Obama tried diplomacy and was undermined. Trump tried coercion and was dragged into war. Netanyahu tried war and was stopped by his own ally. The triangle persists because it is not a strategy. It is a symptom of an issue that no single leader, however determined, has proven capable of resolving.